Welcome to the Verdin Verdict Sports Show, where we bring you sports talk on the go. I'm your host, Jacob Verdin, and today we're going to dive into LSU versus Mississippi State. We're going to break down the matchup, predict how we feel things are going to go out, and just relay some important messages we've gotten from Coach Kelly and the players throughout the week of preparation. First things first, everyone wants to talk about Mississippi State and their new style of offense. We've seen Will Rogers climb to the top of the passing yard list in terms of career in the SEC. We've seen him become the leader. We've seen him grow. We've seen him mature. We've even got to talk to him a couple times at the Manning camp. I'm a big Will Rogers fan in a sense where I think he's a really smart guy, really calculated, and he can make great throws, great decisions. He's a great quarterback. They only used him, they used him really slim last week. They only let him pass 17 times. Seems like they're all in on the running, all in on the pushing the ball through the line of scrimmage, 39 carries, but they only had a 3.7 yard per carry average against Arizona. And, the Arizona game was rough for Mississippi State in multiple reasons, multiple ways. They kind of screwed that one up. But the 3.7 yards per carry is making me wonder. I think they're going to kind of try to not necessarily shy away from the run style and go more toward the air raid. But, if you're looking at LSU, the DB room, the kind of troubles that they're having in that position, the question marks, everything floating around here, especially after the Florida State game. You see Keon Coleman go off for multiple touchdowns, gets a hat trick on the Tigers. I think things like that are going to kind of tweak the system a little bit. I wouldn't think Will Rogers is going to be completely forgotten about here in this matchup. It would be crazy for them to try to do that. I think what they do is they try to implement a type of play action style balanced offense. They're going to run the ball a little bit. They're going to try to use some ball fakes, use some type of motion plays, and get some passes in the short field. But I think LSU's defensive front can be ready for that. I don't think that's going to be something too confusing for the Tigers to handle. We'll cover that one a bit later. But as we mentioned, they're going to use a lot of screens. They're going to try to get guys moving around and test out that man or zone coverage, try to get their keys read. I think, though, the fact that they went 3 for 11 on third down last week shows us just about the efficiency rating of that offense. We know that Mississippi State, in the face of pressure, can sometimes, sit in an egg and just create nothing. And the confusion that we can bring them with guys like Harold Perkins, Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, Ovia Gofu, those guys are elite pass rushers, but they also work together in such a way that it's going to help that DB room not have to play so close for so long. They get a little bit of a breather at the end when Will Rogers is getting tagged up or pressured or moved off his spot. If everyone works together and, like Matt House says, does their 111th, I think that this team could be in a lot different situation. Everyone's saying, well, the competition is ramping up here. It's SEC play. We're going to get to see what this team is made of. Yeah, now that is true. However, a Florida State Jordan Travis-like player, that's an elite quarterback. That's arguably top 10 quarterbacks, maybe even top 5 quarterbacks in college football today. So Will Rogers is not like a huge step down. Like I said earlier, I think he's a smart guy, great arm, and he's got a lot of potential. But it's a difference. It's a big difference. The O-line's different. The weapons are different. I think that this is not as big of a test. So, the Tigers can go into this and use it as a proving moment. Use it as a moment to show that they've learned, they've adjusted, and they're ready. Some people might even call this a trap game. 11 a.m. kickoff on the road. And LSU last year against Mississippi State started slow and had to circle back and get the win. I think that, we can even see something similar to that here. Mississippi State rushed out to a 14-0 lead against Arizona last week, and then they wound up almost coughing it up in overtime, despite forcing the 5 turnovers, despite having mistake after mistake after mistake go their way. It seemed like in the end it kind of was all for naught. So LSU could come back and, circle some things around and do the second half adjustment style that Matt House was so famous for last season. But moving towards Mississippi State's defense, I'll let you know a little bit about them. They're going to run a 3-3-5 scheme. 3-3-5 is 3 D linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 DBs. So they're going to have a lot of coverage out there. They're going to have a lot of the guys looking to, take the ball out the air. However, that defense saw issues containing a quarterback last week. Seemed like at times they weren't able to, bring enough pressure, and that not necessarily is, a fault of the 3-3-5, but as much as it is maybe the quarterback they were playing was put in a good scheme. Maybe he was just a great guy, yada, yada, yada. But, like, when you're playing Jaden Daniels, you got to be on your P's and Q's. If you're having issues last week and I see, containments get busted and the edge not getting sealed and your quarterback able to just manipulate and calculate and just precisely break your guys apart, that spells trouble. And I think Jaden Daniels, guys like Malik Neighbors, Kyron Lacey, and hell, even the backfield are going to be able to move around on Mississippi State a lot more than people would like to think. We scored 72 points last week. Yeah, it's Grambling, but that offense is on fire. That offense is calculated. And we've seen throughout fall camp and spring training that offense was, a couple steps ahead of that defense of LSU. It seemed like the offense has been firing for a little bit, and I think that this could be their moment to go ahead and put the SEC on notice. Like, hey, we screwed up in week 1, but we're here to recalibrate and turn some heads. I think Mississippi State's defense, though, forcing 5 turnovers and still needing overtime is kind of, signifying that they couldn't really close it out. They were having issues, getting that big play and sealing it and keeping it on offense, and that's not always their fault. They were having to go right back out, right back out, right back out. But all in all, when you're playing LSU, you're not going to be able to do that. 1, you're not getting the 5 turnovers, and 2, you might get 50 points dropped on your head if your offense is turning that ball back and, putting the defense right back out there, fatigued. Have fun running with some of the fastest, wide receivers and running backs in the conference when you're needing an oxygen mask the entire game. Another thing that Mississippi State's defense did, I'll say a positive, they played well in the middle of coverage in a sense where that's where the majority of the takeaways came. Linebackers had their head in a swivel. They were playing great coverage. And then it just looks like, if Jaden Daniels really, really is having an accurate game and really pushes that ball and takes some risk, I think it's a high-scoring effort for LSU, and I think that 10-point spread is going to be covered. I think another thing Mississippi State is going to have to fix is that sloppiness on the penalty side. 9 penalties, 90 yards, that's something that you can't do. Not only can you not force 5 turnovers and not do anything with it and still let it go to overtime and still let it be up in the air and still let it go almost to a 50-50 split, but whenever you're on offense or even defense and you're doing simple mistakes that makes you, lose plays or makes you get pushed back in yardage, that's hidden yardage that's going to kill you all game long. All game long. It's a game of inches here. Every second matters. Every snap counts. I don't think that, the team playing undisciplined and getting flags thrown all over the place is going to come out on top. But hey, we saw that in Florida State. We saw the unnecessary roughnesses. We saw the unsportsmanlike conduct, and Florida State still came out. So that's not, indicative of, there's penalties, you're losing. No. Even in this situation, Mississippi State, 9 penalties, 90 yards. They had more penalties and more penalty yardage than Arizona, and they got the dub. However, you don't want your mistakes to add up and, have like a compounding interest effect on you throughout the entire football game. And that might be what Mississippi State faces against LSU. Now, let's talk about LSU's offense a little bit. I know it's kind of a hot topic. A lot of people are thinking, hey, putting their coordinator hats on and thinking that we should maybe do a quarterback change or maybe some more running backs should be out there and we shouldn't have the group out there that we do. Some people are even wondering if the offensive line unit is going to stay with the same 5 at the same 5 positions that we've seen. But all in all, I think, if the offense goes in and lets Jaden get mobile and lets him just be comfortable and dissect that defense, then they're going to see success. You just got to give him time. You got to be able to secure the edge and let those plays develop. Don't just let him, get confused and get 1 or 2 reads in and have to roll out and bounce. Let's let him scan the field. Let's let him get into his rhythm. Let's let him take some deep breaths in the pocket and be like, all right, my guys got me today. Let's go out and let's perform. Now, to the offensive line's defense, Jaden's going to have to be trusting in his arm, in his scheme, in the plays that the coaches are calling, and in his guys up front. He's got to stand there and let that thing rip. If this is your Heisman year, and if you're going to be considered a Heisman finalist, you've got to turn things around right now, not later, not next week, not when you got guys like Caleb Williams and Shadir Sanders going crazy over and over and over. That's the consistency that, they wanted that award. So if you're Jaden Daniels and you want those Heisman moments and you want, that spotlight to stay on you, Saturday morning is when you have to put the world on notice and keep that attention on you. I think he's got to go out there and not necessarily have a 5-touchdown, 400 passing yard game, no, but he's got to put on and he's got to show everyone that he can run that offense. he can go out and make the plays necessary. He can take LSU on a 3rd and 5 and turn it into a huge gain. Or he can, in the face of pressure, in the face of a collapsing pocket, can escape outside and throw one down the sideline like an old Joe Burrow type play. We got to be able to have that explosivity back. We got to be able, and we saw it against Florida State. Open and drive. We pushed down the field, but then we can't get it in the end. I think that us pushing the ball down the field, us taking risk and being confident, it'll pay off, especially in a situation like this. I think this is the time to do it. And I think LSU's in a pretty good situation because, you need wide receivers to get physical and make the plays, and you need them to trust in their quarterback. And, I'm not saying that they don't, but if you get everyone on the same page here and you get everyone walking in to Starkville on Saturday, confident, thinking that they're the top of the SEC West, I think they're going to put on a show. If you walk in confused and like, oh, well, Florida State was rough and we might have to figure some things out and this, that, and the other, it might be, a similar story. But I think LSU's turned the page. They've kind of forgotten about it. And, they took what they needed from it, but they're not going to let it drag them down and get them frustrated or, have them guess whether or not they should be in that moment. I think LSU's just got to stick to their system and let the rest figure itself out. We got a long season ahead of us. Look at guys like A&M losing, Alabama losing. The SEC West is wide open. We got to play our own game and figure it out and just let the things fly. Let's do a little bit of an injury update. We got Mason Taylor hurt last week with an ankle. He's made a lot of progress this week according to Coach Kelly. He's probable for this game. He's trending in the right direction, but Coach Kelly said that they're going to put out pretty much the whole tight end room. Freshmen are going to get reps. Everyone's going to get reps. They're going to try to see, not necessarily, who the next guy is, so to speak, but they're going to try to figure out the guy that can, step up if a Mason Taylor were to be down for an extended amount of time. Thankfully, we're not going to have to deal with that, and, like we said, he's trending in the right direction, but I would see a lot of reps for a lot of tight ends on Saturday, and that's good too because if we're in the running game, you want to be able to keep a fresh blocker out there, out a little sixth man, and really beat that pass rush. But another thing, running back room, going to keep seeing shared snaps. You got Logan Diggs, you got Caleb Jackson, you got Josh Williams, you even got John Emery Jr., you got injured Armani Goodwin, Noah Cain. You got a lot of guys, a lot of running backs you can put out there. LSU's definitely not hurting or definitely not thin at the running back position. But we don't really know who the main guy is. You can guess a Logan Diggs or even a Josh Williams. But all in all, I don't think Coach Kelly's going to reveal that too soon. I think he's going to keep that ace up his sleeve. He's going to go out and still feel it out. He says he wants a guy that's going to make the plays, that's going to see the field the best, that's going to be able to hit the holes. And it's all about trust. I know experience plays a big role in it. He said normally the most experienced back gets the shine. And in this case, it would probably be a Josh Williams or a Logan Diggs. But a guy like Caleb Jackson that can give you multiple touchdowns in that 6 foot, 225-pound frame is very valuable in a running back room like this, especially at LSU when he could be your next, Leonard Fournette-esque player. So I think the running back room is going to be something that you see kind of interchangeable at times. Each back's going to kind of have their own role, which is very good. LSU having more skilled players is better than them not having enough. So I'll take it every single day of the week. An unfortunate injury report for the defense, however. Omar Spates is not trending in the right direction. It seems like he's going to be, doubtful and probably going to lean toward that out ranking. But Coach Kelly said, he's not having as good of a recovery as Mason is. He's not going to be able to just bounce back in a short week like Mason Taylor. However, they got a lot of people that are going to be able to be put in that spot, whether it be a Whit Weeks, Wes Weeks, Greg Penn, yada, yada, yada. He didn't really specify if Harold Perks is going to play a lot inside compared to outside. You see fans always preaching, put Harold where he plays best. Let's put Harold outside. Let's get him to the quarterback. Let's utilize our skills. And that is true. However, there is merit and there is value in trying to put Harold Perkins in a situation where he grows that coverage reading ability. Yeah, it's rough right now. He's younger, but, you do want to grow his skills for the next level. However, you also want to see him hitting the quarterback. And I think there's a good mixture of both that they're going to be able to hit here that they've been working on. And it's going to be very exciting to see. I think, seeing Mason Smith also get reps versus SEC opponents, that's going to be exciting as well. We got to see the return of Big Zero last week. And seeing the return on the SEC stage is going to be just as exciting. It's almost going to be like watching it all over again. You want to see him get in there and try to get a sack against Will Rogers, or just be that answer to that run defense that LSU needs Saturday. Speaking of the run defense, the Jacks need to step up. You need Ovie Oghoufo to stand tall. You need guys to really just show that they're not going to, I'm not going to say get pushed around. They're not really getting pushed around, but you want that mentality that we've been seeing as of, the Grambling game with Harold Perkins, or even just different moments throughout the aftermath of the Florida State game. It looks like that energy isn't sucked out of LSU. A lot of people are like, man, they're not playing with that competitive fire, yada, yada, yada. That's one game. Just because Florida State's coming out here, and I'm not going to say, beating the brakes off of them, 31-7 run in the second half, it put a layer of character in this team. We'll tell you that. Yeah, that game was rough, but moving forward from it, they're going to learn, they're going to adjust, they're going to recalibrate. And I think that, they got that fire under them. They want to prove everyone wrong. They want everyone to see, hey, we're still LSU. We can still make a shot. We still believe. We're still the team that we think we were. You heard Jaden Daniels comment on it. He still thinks that they got that national championship potential, and it's up to them to be able to realize that. So with the defense, of course, DBs need to shapen up, but that's going to come with time and, with them just being comfortable playing with each other. As the year gets better, as the year goes, you're going to see them get better, which is going to be very good. However, a guy like J.K. Johnson would have been very nice to see get mixed into this. An Ohio State cornerback, a lot of good, experience on him, and he played quite a few games. He started in, I think, a third of the games he played at Ohio State, so adding that veteran to the locker room would have been big, but him getting that return date pushed back to maybe even December, Coach Kelly said, is just, it's almost impossible. That would be a very late season return, which would be confusing, and, we probably just won't see it this season, unfortunately. But swinging things back to the prediction side of it and just examining LSU versus Mississippi State as a whole, here are my 3 keys to victory. Number 1, that defensive front, it needs to stand up, slam that run game, and just show them teeth, like we were saying. Show that mentality. Let them know that you're here for business. Let them know that everyone else in the SEC is going to get, even worse reaction than what y'all are seeing. We're going to go out and play that smash mouth football. We're going to push everyone around. We're going to try to stop y'all from doing what y'all want to do, hit Will Rogers a couple times, create havoc, and hopefully, put on a similar performance to last week. Number 2, offense needs to chew the clock and score often. LSU cannot have any missed chances on the offensive side. I don't want to go out there and definitely don't want to go out there and turn the ball over. But Jaden Daniels is pretty conservative in that regard. What we don't want to do is punt that football. Run the football on a long down and distance situation. Snap the ball and try to pass and hold it and get Jaden sacked or get Jaden hit. And what we definitely don't want is Jaden taking unnecessary hits. If he's running out the pocket, please, by all means, JD5, get down. Don't get rocked. Don't try to hurdle and get slammed or nothing. We need you. Stay healthy. Do not take any unnecessary hits. Number 3, use your talent. I think that LSU has a much more talented roster than Mississippi State. Look at where we are. We're in Louisiana. We're the number 2 graded transfer portal class. I think that LSU has a lot of things that Mississippi State does not, whether it be a Harold Perkins, a Mason Smith, or a Malik Neighbors, even a Jaden Daniels. We got things that they do not have. Let's utilize it. Let's confuse them. Let's overload them. And let's come out here with a W. I think if you do those 3 things, LSU is going to be able to cover that 10-point spread. They might even be able to cover it by a lot more. My prediction is going to be 31-21 LSU. I think it'll be a first-half battle. However, I think out comes the adjustments in the second half, and LSU is going to be up on top. I'm not going to say that Mississippi State's coming out to a 14-0 lead like they did last year and last week against Arizona, but I could see them coming out and starting off a little hotter, and then LSU kind of fizzling it out and coming back to win in the second half. Let's take a look at a couple of the other SEC games this week. They only really got 2 SEC games that are worth noting. One is going to be Georgia versus South Carolina. And not a lot of people are going to see this as a game that's kind of interesting. Everyone's like, oh, well, Georgia's going to run away with it. Now, that is true. It's a moment for Spencer Rattler to make his case to the NFL scouts. You know what I mean? It's a great elite defense in Georgia, probably one of the toughest teams that South Carolina is going to play all season. I'd be interested to see how a quarterback like Spencer Rattler handles that adversity. I think he is Very good quarterback in the SEC, arguably top 5. Great arm, had a great start to his career. He's been looking, to kind of hit that stride that he was thinking he was going to be able to hit at Oklahoma. But all in all, I think that when you compare the caliber of teams, of course, the Bulldogs are going to be better than the Gamecocks. Look at the last 2 years of their record. Georgia's 29-1, and South Carolina's 15-11. Imagine trying to recruit a high schooler to your college when in the last 2 years you've barely floated above 500, and someone else in your division has only lost 1 game. I think that South Carolina's caliber of team is way different than Georgia. So, yeah, South Carolina's more than likely going to lose. More than likely going to lose by a wide margin. However, I think, a plus 27 spread on a team like Spencer Rattler in South Carolina? I don't see that big of a demolishing happening. I could be wrong, but I think Saturday could be a very interesting moment for Spencer Rattler and his career. Another thing, Tennessee versus Florida. Tennessee has only beat the Gators twice since 2005. That's an insane stat. I think that rivalry is going to get a little bit of evening out here as Billy Napier and Josh Heupel enter the newest era of that rivalry where Tennessee is the better team. But I won't get too ahead of myself because Austin Peay played Tennessee last week, and in the fourth quarter, it was a 10-point game. And that doesn't mean that Tennessee's horrible. It doesn't mean that Tennessee's going to lose to Florida. It does mean things aren't exactly figured out there like they were last year, though. Joe Milton is, easing into the role, but I think it's his time to shine as well. If you want me to find 2 players for you that are underrated and that are going to turn a lot of heads this week in the SEC, it's going to be Spencer Rattler and Joe Milton. I think that Tennessee's going to come away with the win in Florida or against Florida. Joe Milton's going to go out and perform. And I think even though Georgia's probably going to beat South Carolina, Spencer Rattler's going to be able to show some strides in his game and show a little bit of flashes. Like, man, we might be able to do something with this guy. But that's my breakdown for LSU and Mississippi State. I think the Tigers come out with a win, hopefully. And, for more LSU coverage, we'll be hitting these streams or these type of shows every Thursday. We're going to be breaking down the coverage from Brian Kelly, from the LSU players, and the week of preparation that we get to witness. But this has been the Verdin Verdict. Hope y'all have a good night. Hope the Tigers get that dub like we said. Thanks for watching. Y'all have a good one.